You're listening to Inside Lebo, a podcast giving you an inside look at Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Hosted by Assistant Municipal Manager and Municipal Planner Ian McMeans and Assistant Public Information Officer and Online Editor Stephanie Hackey.
Hello and welcome to Inside Lebo. I'm your host, Assistant Municipal Manager and Municipal Planner Ian McMeans.
And I'm Assistant Public Information Officer and Online Editor Stephanie Hackey.
Our guest today is a second-time guest on the show, Mount Lebanon's Finance Director, Andrew McCreery. Andrew was on at the tail end of last year to talk about the budgeting process, and he's back again to talk about where all our money went.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So today we're talking about the PAFR. What is the PAFR?
It's what a specific term called the Popular Annual Financial Report. This is a nomenclature that is used by the Government Finance Officers Association. So we have an annual comprehensive financial report in which all of the financial data is derived from. So the report that we'll be talking about today that was disseminated in the May 2023 magazine was all derived from the annual comprehensive financial report. Municipalities all over the country call it different things. So you can call it whatever you want. Year in review, you can call it here's where it went, here's where it went.
How do we land on PAFR?
Well, PAFR is referring to the nomenclature for the GFOA award. But we call it, if you see on the front of our PAFR, it's called the annual report. So why is it called the annual report? Because it's required by our Home Rule Charter. So our Home Rule Charter, which was passed in the 70s, requires that the manager produce a year-end financial summary to the commission and to the citizenry. So this is something that was a foresight many years ago for passing the Home Rule Charter, is that the manager has to report to the citizenry what happened with our financials, in addition to all the other things that happen, because the PAFR, or the annual report, as it's referred to in the Home Rule Charter, also talks about other things that happen within that are outside the financial side. So other awards we won, big initiatives that we may have had, things that are coming up, things to watch out for. So the comprehensive report, right? The comprehensive plan. I'm sorry, which we've been doing for the last year and a half, was in last year's annual report. It's in this year's annual report, so it's updating the community on also non-financial items as well.
Why
so it's putting that all together because it's going to have a financial impact. So things that we do in the comprehensive plan will have a financial impact in the future as well, in addition to the initiatives. So let's use a public safety initiative, for instance, right? So if you had a community outreach, so the school resource officer. A couple years ago, the school resource officer was put into the high school. Well, that has a financial impact. So you talk about that initiative, but it also has a financial impact. So while in the totality of the budget might not be a huge percentage, but it does have a budgetary impact for years to come because it is personnel and all those things that come with personnel. It does have a financial impact. But those are the things why you want to combine the two. So it's not just, we already have that. If you really want to see all the numbers, we already have that report. If you really want to dive into the data, we got that report for you.
I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, and most people do, and that's okay. And that's why a PAFR, as we refer to it, is important because it becomes digestible. It's something that we, as the municipality, primarily the manager, it's the manager's report. Yes, a lot of the work is done by the public information officer. She's the number one person running this report. I deliver the financial data as part of this. I have certain ideas for about half of it with the financial data. I have ideas. I run them past the public information officer and our designer. But ultimately, it comes back to, we get this approved sometime in February of the overall design, aesthetic, and what our theme of the year was. It comes from the manager. So the public information officer and I have ideas, and then we present that to the manager, and he says yay or nay, and it works really well that way. And then we start drafting the narrative and the financials, start to frame around that. So it's a good process, and it comes out in May, but all the data that's derived from it is all audited and ready to go at the beginning of April. And that comes out in the annual comprehensive financial report. And the annual comprehensive financial report is a 100+ page document, right? So it has a lot of data,
wow.
and there's a lot of text, there's notes, there's all these different things that are in it. And to prepare for this report, as I'm sitting across from the assistant PIO. A magazine takes a while to get out.
Yes.
So it's not something you just produce in a week and it's out.
Yep.
So,
2 months of hard
yes.
work beforehand.
Yeah.
For
So we
sure.
get the face of the financials, which means just the numbers. So no text around it, no narrative around it. We start crafting the narrative once we get the face, what we call the face of the financials, in March. So at the beginning of March, I have the numbers. So. And that comes back to the point of why it's important that we get it out in May is timeliness.
Right.
So in financial reporting, timeliness is the most important thing. So we get this out in May, and that's pretty quick. If you look at other annual reports that people produce, it's sometimes in September, October of a year,
later,
almost a whole year later. We get it out logistically as fast as we can with the personnel we have. If you had a bigger office and so on and so forth, you could do it faster,
Right.
but I don't think you're doing it much faster, especially the way we disseminate it. It's in the magazine. It's in the magazine every year.
So every single resident that lives in Mount Lebanon gets a copy of this at their house then?
Yes, that's correct. And every business in Mount Lebanon as well, as well as some surrounding businesses and other targeted locations. That get the magazine as well.
Is
so
this
it's
about
something you can count on.
transparency? Is that, what is the goal of, sharing this annual report? I know you might not be able to go back to the Home Rule Charter whenever they passed it and read their minds, but what is the goal of this? Is it to show our residents, hey, this is how we spend our money. Every single dollar that you've paid us last year, this is where it went.
We've done that for many, many years. I think that, yes, we've, let me answer that question here. So, there's two things that come to mind immediately. Yes, transparency, but that is a word of the day, word of the time. I think it's accountability. And yes, I'm an accountant, so it's accountability. But I think back when they passed this, it was accountability. It's saying, okay, no matter who the commission is, no matter who the manager is, there will be some form of accountability that you will be reporting to the citizenry every year as to what happened. Now, during a budget time, I will tell you that once a budget's passed, a lot of communities, and it's almost habit, it's natural to think that this is going to happen, is that once it's passed, it's kind of like, oh, it's passed, we're not even going to talk about it. Well, this makes you accountable as to, well, the budget you passed, did you do what you said you were going to do?
Right.
So that's what this kind of annual report does for you.
That follow up through.
It does.
That says, hey, we did what we told you we were going to do. Hey, we crossed these boxes off. We checked these boxes off.
And quite frankly, there's also things that we didn't think about. So
Right.
think of COVID, right? So that's probably the first one that comes to mind for most people is when the pandemic hit in March of 2020. Well, when we were in 2019 planning for it, we had no idea that was going to hit. So it's both. It's both.
Right.
It's both the accountability to what it was and to what actually happened.
Right.
Because you got to have both those, and that's something Mount Lebanon does well. I think we have the infrastructure and the history of making sure that we look at it all year long, not just at one pinpoint in time.
And for our listeners, just to talk broadly about the process a little bit too. So unlike the state government or the school district, the municipality operates on a annual calendar budget. So it's a January to December budget. So when Mr. McCreery is here talking about, we're getting it out in May, that's really a like we said, pretty quick turnaround from when the year end happens at the end of December. Plus there's, some late things that come in with payments from the previous year and things like that in early of, in January or so, plus the lead time to get it all in the magazine and out to the public. So this is a really good way that we not only wrap up the prior year, but then also sort of set the stage for the budget talks that start to happen, in the latter half of every calendar year to prepare for the following year. So the first half of the year in finance is often a look back at the previous year, and then the second half of the year is a look forward to the next year. But it does sync up very well with, getting the information out to the public in a timely fashion, even over the summer to set the stage for, hey, here's what's going to be coming in the next budget talks.
Yeah, and I think to build off of that, the data's available in February for our year-end stuff. So even before the auditors sign off on it as the formal report that we're talking about in April. So we're talking about 4 months. Actually, it's a little over 3 months. It's full 3. We get it out at the beginning of April. So you're talking a little over 3 months that we're getting it out. And I will tell you, there might not be another municipality around here in Western Pennsylvania that gets it out faster.
Oh, that's amazing.
There's nobody. I would almost guarantee. The people look at me and go, "Wait, what? You get a full annual comprehensive financial report out in 3 months?" Yes, we do. That being said, on our website on Open Lebo, that financial data is posted in early March, at the latest, maybe even late February. So within 2 months, we've closed our books.
So if you're really into looking at the numbers per se,
Correct.
and not the narrative, you can go online and
Right.
you can look at Open Lebo and get all those details.
That's correct, and you can, and there's a portal on there to ask questions if you had a question on what you saw, so on and so forth. That comes directly to my office, and we can respond to you within a short time frame to make sure we get you those answers. So, it's always out there. We also disseminate all of our information to banks, and we have all these disclosures we do. And for the PAFR, this is our biggest reach, right? It's not that annual comprehensive financial report. It's the PAFR. That's where we get our biggest reach, and that's through the magazine, that's through online, through our website. We also submit for an award that we've won since 1993. So we've won an award through that Government Finance Officers Association since 1993.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yes, we've won that award for the standards that they say, hey, you should at least meet these minimums in an annual report. They call it the PAFR, and we've won that ever since 1993. And one of their criteria is how you disseminate. And we do it on Twitter and Facebook and all those things that the Public Information Office absolutely does a wonderful job doing. Yes, that was a plug for them.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. So when we do that, the comments we receive back comments on those every year. So yes, we win the award, but those people that review it to say, hey, you've met those qualifications, also give you feedback. And as part of that feedback every year is, wow, you guys get it to everybody. You really try to get it
That's
as
amazing.
many people as you can, because there's a lot of communities that can't do that for a whole host of reasons. One is just to produce a report like this. When I worked at a prior municipality who would have the means to do this, they never did this.
Oh, wow.
And they still don't do this. Right? They focus in other areas, right? They focus in an ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, and a budget, and they win awards for those. But they don't do a PAFR. Just like here, we win an award for our ACFR, which we've won since 1976, longest in Pennsylvania, right?
Good
So
job.
standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So, but we've also done the we submit for an award on the PAFR, and the budget we don't submit for an award because the criteria that you have to meet doesn't serve us operationally. We would just be doing it to win an award, and that's not why you should be doing a budget. You shouldn't be wasting your time doing it if it doesn't operationally meet your needs.
So what you're saying is, wow, it's great we win this award every year. Really, this document is for our residents. This is about them knowing what's happening and holding ourselves accountable to them.
That's correct. That's correct. It's not for winning the award. It does a great job for getting that information out.
Yeah.
And you mentioned auditors too, so these numbers aren't just the self-produced numbers. They've been checked by an outside agency.
That's
as well.
correct. You can tick and tie to our financial report if you need to, if someone so chooses.
Yes. Great. Well, we're going to take a short break to take a breather, have a drink of water, and we will be right back with more on the annual financial report with Finance Director Andrew McCreery. Welcome back to Inside Lebo. We're here to talk more about our annual financial report with Finance Director Andrew McCreery. So we talked a lot about the production of the report, the timeline, and how we distribute it out to all of our residents via the May magazine, which is the Municipal Resource Guide. If you're interested in learning more about how the resource guide's put together, check out our episode a few back with Merle Jantz from the Public Information Office, where he talked about putting the resource guide together. But the annual financial report is part of that. So let's talk about 2022. How did we wind up at the end of the year?
We wound up in very good situation. There was a couple things that happened. One was we knew coming into the 2022 budget we needed to have some expanded capacity. So we raised taxes in 2022, so we're not going to shy away from that. We did raise taxes 0.2 mils in 2022, netting about $423,000 more in revenue. So that was used for specific projects. You can check back to the budget on that. And using that capacity, we're hoping to use in future years. We didn't want to just raise it every year incrementally. We said we're going to raise it 0.2 mils and use that for the next couple years to make sure that we have enough capacity for things that we need to do. Secondly, things we didn't know that were coming still out of post-pandemic employment side. Our other major tax revenue is earned income tax, and in 2022, it has eclipsed real estate tax in revenue. It is our largest general fund source is earned income tax, and we had a unexpected over $1 million variance in 2022. So
in
that
the
was
good direction or the bad direction?
In a good direction.
Okay.
Yes, in a good direction.
That was
yes.
a great question.
Yes, positive variance, as we like to say. When you hear an accountant, I'm just as a sidebar, when you hear an accountant talk, they talk about positive variances and negative variances. And when I write that, I think that most people understand that, but you would be surprised when people still question you on that.
So that's surprising to me. The earned income tax was actually the biggest revenue source last year.
It has started to become the biggest revenue source.
And that's the first time ever, or has that happened
before? It's the first time, yes, I believe ever.
Wow.
It's eclipsed it.
Why is that?
Mount
know?
Lebanon residents are doing well in their jobs.
Yeah.
You know, they're earning
Amazing.
they're earning at a good clip. So
Amazing.
But what we were trying to do in the PAFR, relating back to kind of the overall what we're talking about today, was these are economic headwinds that we need to watch out for, because with the inflationary market that we were in at the end of 2022 and continued into 2023, we need to watch, hey, are prices starting to come down? What's the Fed doing? Those types of things. How's that affecting the job market? Because yes, we have historically low unemployment rate, but I don't think that tells the whole story, and that's a whole different podcast to talk about those things and let an economist come in to talk about that. But we need to watch out for that. We need to make sure we can't bank on $1 million variance and be our new baseline. I don't know that yet. It may be. I don't think we're going to grow $1 million a year.
Right.
And that's something that we're trying to point out there. In addition, real estate transfer tax, which on the sale of every property in Mount Lebanon, we get a percentage of that. Well, for years, the Mount Lebanon housing market was fantastic, right? There was a lot of homes being sold, a lot of transfers happening. Well, as soon as that interest rate started going up, we started seeing them slow down. And it's about a 3-month lag time before we start seeing because you got to think that when you're selling a house, it usually takes a while. You know, it takes 2 to 3 months. Yep. So a lot of those people, when the interest rates started going up, they were already in the midst of a sale. They were already past that point. I'm going to buy this home.
Right.
Yeah.
But those that were newer to the market maybe say, "Ooh, I'm going to pull back on that," or those that were fervent and wanted to get into the market, we're going to get into it regardless of what the interest rates were. And you don't start to see those net effects until about 3 months in. So those interest rates really started flying at the end of the summer last year, flying upwards. So we saw many Fed rate hikes that affected mortgage rates that we really started, and we've started to see that here in late December, January. We're starting to see our real estate transfer tax start to slow. So there are things that, yes, we had some good revenue in 2022, but there are some economic headwinds that we're trying to watch and make sure we're on top of as we move towards the 2024 budget.
So when you're doing the budget and these year-end reviews, you can't just look at Mount Lebanon's numbers. You have to look at the total picture, what's going on in the country and the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have good resources, whether that be our Pension Investment Advisory Board, which doesn't affect the statements that you see before you, but you can get a lot of those economic headwinds and understanding those at a national and sometimes international level. And then there's a lot of good resources around here between CMU and Pitt. There's a lot of different things that give us information that can really tell us what's happening in western Pennsylvania, Allegheny County, and specifically the South Hills. There's a lot of good information that we can get to make sure that we have the most precise revenue information moving into the 24 budget.
Absolutely. So talking about expenditures, where did the majority of our money go?
So there's many different ways that you can cut. Just like a home, cut the budget into slices, right? So if you're looking at your home budget, similar, we do that same thing here. Is what are you spending on? You can look at it in groupings of by department, right, or by function, like we could like to call it. So functionally, operationally, we spend the most in public safety, police, fire, and emergency services, so on and so forth. So that's the most where we spend. Public Works being second, just with the big contracts we have. Our garbage contract, so on and so forth, are wrapped up in Public Works as well, which is our largest annual operating contract. So on and so forth. But then you can also slice it a different way, right? You can cut it up in a different way. How do we spend it by what we call object code, which is personnel. Personnel is our biggest expenditure, right? It's the people we have here, which is our biggest asset. While we have parks, while we have big trucks, and we have police cars, our biggest asset is our people.
Right.
And that makes up the majority of our operating budget is our people and all costs associated with our people. So.
Very interesting. I'm learning a lot.
We try to do it in a kind of percentage basis because people can get lost in the numbers. Like if you looked at the city of Pittsburgh, right, and you looked at it, and you looked at their hundreds of millions, as ours is maxing out at 60 million, right, for all funds, right? We were talking about 60 million. If you looked at that, but you can look at percentage-wise, right? So percentage, what do they spend by function? What do they spend on public safety? What do they spend on personnel as a percentage of their operating budget and those types of things? And that's really what we're trying to do here. So you can take a look at this and then see how it relates year over year. So while you might see in the PAFR year over year, there might be some of the same charts. They look the same. Well, that's because we don't want you to get something different every year. You want to be able to compare it and say, okay, well, what did we spend last year? Oh, we're spending the same on public safety.
Right.
We're spending the same on the library, whatever it may be. So it makes my job a little bit easier. I don't have to come up with a new design every year, but there is a purpose behind that. So that people can pull out last year's May magazine and this year's May magazine and say, hey, they look fairly similar. We'll probably change the design every 3 to 4 years. We'll change that up. But a lot, if you really want to do the digging, it will have the same information within it.
So speaking of the year over year, were there any big differences between the 2021 report and the 2022 report that we just issued?
Not really, no. And the whole point of the PAFR is to point out those variances, right? And I think that's what we do. You look for that bolded text and those things that we try and point out to say, hey, this is why things changed in aggregate. When it gets down to the nitty-gritty, that's next year's budget. That's really where you're going to change things. If you want to change a function or a service level that we're going to be doing, the way we budget, that's really where you get into the nitty-gritty. This report's not for that. But spending-wise was not much different from 2021. We'll have some large capital projects finishing up in 2023. Which will be nice. So some of those will be finishing up. The comprehensive plan should be finishing up this year. So that'll be giving us a horizon of new projects to be moving forward.
We cannot wait, Ian.
Yes. I imagine there'll be multiple podcasts on that one.
There will be, I'm sure.
So when it comes right down to it, there wasn't much different from 2021. But that's what you should see in local government. You should see not wild swings. We should be prepared for everything. As much as we can. We have a healthy fund balance. Those are things that are pointed out within the report. Fund balance meaning your savings account. Our savings account is healthy and where it needs to be, given standards that have been published by various organizations. So, I think we're well prepared for the rest of 2023. We're already halfway through, or about to be halfway through, and starting to prepare for 2024.
Speaking of 2023, what are you expecting for our finances this year then? Is that hard?
that's hard to predict in 5 months, but we're here sitting in May. But I don't expect, given historically of what you see in Mount Lebanon, even given economic headwinds, we at the very least are going to remain flat. We don't see much decrease generally, unless there's a major catastrophe that is unforeseen at this point. But there's nothing even in high inflation markets, recessions. You look at historically what happens to Mount Lebanon, we remain flat at the very least. So if we remain flat, we're ready. We can do that. We can absolutely do that. If we have any growth, that's great. We'll use it and plan for it and make sure the tax dollars spent wisely moving forward.
Great. Well, thank you for this very comprehensive look at our finances. If people are interested, they can find the annual report both in the magazine, as we mentioned, also on our website, mountlebanon.org, as well as the Open Lebo platform on our website. Are there any other locations where they should look for it?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, cool. Look in the magazine, look on our website. Well, thank you so much for your time, Andrew. Thanks for joining us today. And that's all for this week's episode of Inside Lebo.
Yeah, thank you so much. This episode was produced by Carrie Monyo with music by Drew Monyo and graphics by Chris Sleeper. And while we're doing this, I would also like to give a shout out to, you said the PIO is Laura Pace-Lilly. She did a lot of the work for the PAFR, and Chris Sleeper did a lot of the layout for it as well, along with Andrew. So thank you all for putting this together for us.
You got it.
We'll be back in a few weeks with another episode of Inside Lebo.
Thanks for listening to Inside Lebo, produced by Mount Lebanon's Public Information Office. Learn more about all things Lebo at mountlebanon.org or by following our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages.